Thank you for being with us today. Um, as you all are probably very well aware, the tectonic plates of global trade are shifting beneath us. Just today, in the first day of the Qatar Investment Forum, the Economic Forum, you've been hearing from a lot of the speakers. Almost every speaker has alluded to the complexity of global supply chains, as well as the disruption, an unprecedented disruption that we're seeing in this space worldwide. And our guests today are uniquely positioned to talk about how how businesses and economies can navigate these shifts in global supply chains, and in laying out essentially how companies, businesses, economies can really demonstrate resilience in the face of these disruptions. Please join me in welcoming Sheikh Mohammed, HF Al-Thani, the CEO of Qatar Free Zones Authority, and Patrick Moebel, the CEO of FedEx Logistics. Before I turn it over to them, I just wanted to highlight a few key points. Qatar, as you saw in that lovely video, is located at the intersection of 3 continents with one of the world's richest GDP per capita. It's among the world's largest LNG exporters. It has invested in several strategically located free zones in close proximity to downtown Doha that can harness these capabilities. And no doubt, many of you in this room are aware of the establishment of a corridor connecting India to the Middle East and parts of Europe through what's known as the IMEC, which will transform some of the routes around this region. So with that as key context, I was going to turn to Mr. Al-Thani here and get some sense from you on how the Middle East is positioning itself as a hub for global trade and supply chains.
Thank you, Sree. Firstly, I would like to say it's a pleasure being with all of you here today in the Qatar Economic Forum. This marks my 3rd year participating in this event, and with each year we see the event expand its significance. If you look at the Middle East, the Middle East is leveraging on its geographic location first and foremost. We also see tremendous efforts for economic reform to emerge as a pivotal hub for global trade. But we also see initiatives like the IMEC dual corridor, as you said, which will immensely enhance connectivity via the region, but I think it will have a positive spillover effect into the wider region. If you look at Qatar, we are strategically positioning ourselves through our infrastructure projects that has been taking place over the last decade, really. Namely in our airports, seaports, and our free zones. And we actually see that bearing fruit in its growing role today. In fact, just yesterday, we've inaugurated our new regional distribution hubs in our Ras Bufantas airport free zone, which is really designed to support companies integrate seamlessly into supply chains, being also in close proximity to the airport. And we're also focused on strategic partnerships as well. And if you look at the logistics sector as an example, 8 out of the 10 largest logistics companies in the world are located here in Qatar. 4 are situated in our free zones. And I'm proud to announce that FedEx will soon will be playing an integral role in our logistics ecosystem. And I'm honored today to be sharing the stage with my friend Patrick. I'll allow Patrick to say a little bit more about this partnership, but definitely stay tuned.
Thank you, Mohammed. So yeah, just talking a bit more about the partnership and when this all started. So it started with our chairman, Mr. Fred Smith, who founded FedEx in 1973, and I joined FedEx 3 years ago, and one of the first things Fred called me into his office for was, well, the Middle East being that strategic, our presence was in Dubai only. Therefore, with the importance of Qatar Airways, we believed that we needed to have a presence in Qatar on one hand and extend that presence not only to an air freight hub, but a logistics hub, which actually expands on ocean freight as well as regional road networks, which we have in this region, connecting the various countries, mainly obviously Saudi Arabia, but connecting all of the Middle East out of Qatar. So You referred earlier to the corridor. We see Qatar not only as a corridor with India, but we see Qatar as a corridor from the world to the world. So we are using Qatar today as a means to transit flows from all of Asia, North Asia, South Asia, India, obviously, Africa, as well as the US. So Qatar for us will play a central role in our network because of its ease of doing business. And obviously, Mohammed, I would like to commend you on the ease of doing business with the Qatar Free Zone. They have a concierge service, which is, I would say, amazing to help companies come to Qatar, which when compared with other, I would say, economies where we are starting up, Qatar is so much easier to do business with. So the ease of doing business, the geographical centrality of Qatar in the Middle East, plus, I would say, and I think we'll address that later, having various points where you can transition, avoiding key strains in the supply chain, like the Red Sea, for example, currently is very important. So in order for us to be able to have an additional hub and logistics center to support our customers and their supply chain was key in that decision. And there is no better, I would say, forum to do that than the Qatar Free Zone team and the location so close to the airport and to the port.
That's actually a really good segue into our next question, and which was really about geopolitical strains and how we should be thinking about navigating these geopolitical strains. You know, I mean, this is again a subject that has come up in many panels throughout the day today. And so I was hoping, Mr. Al-Thani, you might be able to kind of give us a little bit of a window into how you're thinking about it.
I mean, geopolitical strains is never something easy to manage, but we've seen increasingly the region has been diversifying its trade partners, but also emphasizing on local manufacturing initiatives to reinforce resilience. And of course, we're all concerned about the ongoing conflict in Gaza. I mean, we've all heard His Excellency, the Prime Minister, say it this morning, and Qatar is engaged in diplomatic efforts for a permanent ceasefire. But because of this conflict, we see diversions happening in the Red Sea. We see, delays in shipping, which is causing, soaring prices globally. This is mainly because of the rerouting happening around the Cape of Good Hope. We also see, trade volumes through the Suez Canal go down significantly, which could lead to further inflation, unfortunately. But despite these challenges, the region has demonstrated resilience by maintaining and increasing its connectivity globally. If you look at the Qatar and logistics and freight market as an example, we're expecting $9.5 billion in 24, and that's expected to grow by over 40% the next 6 years. So with all these factors in mind, we have to keep monitoring and managing geopolitical tensions. And I think we can do that through various measures, including trade route diversification that we've been seeing the region engaged in already, infrastructure enhancements. I think Qatar is well positioned on that front, but also adopting technologies like AI. And I think increasingly we see global players talk about AI. So I think that's something we should definitely consider and do more of. And building international alliances, but also through policy advocacy, that supports open trade, peaceful dispute resolutions, and I think that's key to navigate through geopolitical strains.
Mr. Moebel, just to kind of come back to you a little bit, geopolitical strains aren't the only kind of strains that we're seeing. We saw during the COVID sort of the pandemic, and we saw the severe disruptions. And you've, of course, from your vantage point, have been uniquely, again, positioned to see how we can navigate that. So what were some of the lessons learned during the pandemic from your end, and what steps can businesses, economies, the world over take to kind of, I guess, shock-proof their operations?
Yeah, so the main thing is understanding there will be plenty of geopolitical strains in our future. So having said that, you know that you need to prepare for those and have plans in place with regards, and in our case, it's mainly flows of goods. We want to make sure the flows of the goods of our customers are continuing throughout the globe despite those strains. So our teams are on a constant basis evaluating the various hotspots in the world and potentially working on scenarios which will enable us to avoid those hotspots, and although avoiding as well, continuing to provide necessary supplies to the people in those hotspots. So preparation on one hand. Mohammed has mentioned AI, so AI will be a support for us with regards to understanding what needs to be done based on the past and current scenarios. Will predict what needs to be done in the future. And then, when you deliver 200 million COVID vaccines throughout the US, you learned a lot as well, how to rally your employees throughout those environments and understand what is necessary. So preparation on one hand, having processes in place in order to avoid those hot spots and go to them in a very nimble way, and then basically seek engagement from the partners, which are ports, airports, the free zones in the world, in order to provide when it happens, the necessary support.
Thank you for that. Let's move a little bit to talking about interest in investments in the region, as well as the role of FDI. Qatar ranks among the top destinations in terms of investment interest for foreign direct investments. In recent years, the top sectors for FDI projects have been traditionally oil and gas, financial services, software and IT. And this is specifically for you, in terms of what sectors do you expect will be ongoing beneficiaries of investment interest? And you talked a bit earlier about AI. How are you thinking about AI?
So definitely, Sree, we do see a surge in foreign direct investments in the region, and these are across various sectors, including emerging technologies, financial services, within the industrial and consumer space, and of course with logistics and trading. We also see a growing trend for businesses seeking to expand their operations out of Qatar, and really to use it as a launching pad to access new markets. And this is driven mainly by the advanced infrastructure in place that I've mentioned, but also the attractive incentive schemes that we have to offer, but also the ability to attract and retain talent and human capital. I believe within the GCC, we all have something unique to offer our investors, and as a block, I think we all complement each other's unique selling points. But in relation to your second part of your question, in relation to AI, I think we're witnessing industry giants integrate AI into their operations to innovate and to elevate customer experience. In Qatar Free Zones, we've been following this trend very closely, and we've been trying to integrate AI in our operations. AI in the logistics space, as an example, is expected to surpass $12 billion in the next 2 years. And just a few months ago, we've formalized an agreement with the German Zeki Center for Artificial Intelligence to set up an AI research center in our free zones. And I'm proud to say that will support the ecosystem of companies we have in Qatar and in our free zones. And we're looking to do much more on that front.
Mr. Moebel, you too talked about AI. Can you give us an example of the kinds of, how are you using that in your own logistics, as you think about logistics?
Yeah, so obviously, without I would say, a digital data strategy, you won't have AI. Obviously, AI is only as good as your data is and access to that data. So I would say as FedEx, we operate in a closed loop. We have our own hubs, own gateways, own planes, and so we own all that data, which is a rather huge amount of data. Now, when you cross over to the ocean freight environment, those are not our assets. So you deal with ports, airports, handling agents, steamship lines, government agencies, customs agencies, and today there is no standard for those exchanges, and the industry has tried since the last 30 years to create standards, but because that industry is so fragmented, the fact that you can bring everybody to one standard is very difficult. So the key to a use of AI is going to be to have a common standard defined, although IE will create the bridge for that. They might take the various standards or company processes and redefine a new standard. I just was last week at a customer summit about digitalization and IE, and it's just unbelievable what AI can do. So, but now back to FedEx. So we have recognized very early on that our data strategy needs to come first, and in 2020, we created DataWorks, which is a FedEx subsidiary which deals with data as well as AI. And we have such a wealth of data within our systems, which we want to provide our customers to make the supply chain more intelligent and interactive, that back in 2020, we invested in that subsidiary, which only purposes to create a data points for our customers and the benefit of the customer as well as FedEx. So great strides on that, and I think AI is just at the beginning, and there is a huge shift in how we'll be working together as an industry in the future because of AI.
Both of you have referred to this, and this question particularly is for you, Mr. Moebel, in terms of, like capitalizing on some of the interconnectivity that we're now seeing, the economic connectivity in the world. And we talked about IMEC, for instance. How are you at FedEx Logistics thinking about this greater connectivity? You talked about, for instance, how Qatar is uniquely positioned here. But could you kind of amplify a little bit more? What does that connectivity do to your kind of business model, as well as, how does it help your business model?
Yeah. So to us, connectivity starts with presence in those various countries. FedEx is present in 220 countries. So and Mohammed actually covered that earlier, our way of investing is creating a presence with people and infrastructure in those countries. So for us, it is key, because we are a network, to have as many presences in the various global environment as we can. Therefore, when you have shifts in supply chains or shifts in behavior of consumers or barriers to commerce, which we have seen between the US and China in the past years, and you have either nearshoring or a shift from certain countries to others of those buying patterns, we need to be ready for those through a presence, and then again, making sure we have the various flows available with our partners, airlines, steamship lines, as well as our trucking environment, in order to accommodate for those. So wherever the world goes, cargo is always going to find a way to get to a consumer. And what our means are is to make that easy for the consumer, cheap for the consumer, to get to those goods in order for our customers to be profitable in a sustainable way.
You have earlier also talked about the importance of investing in ocean sort of connectivity and infrastructure. How important is that for you?
So we mostly talk globally when there is a crisis about the air environment, but 95% of the world trade is done through ocean. So, and Mohammed, you mentioned earlier that because of the Red Sea diversion, the ocean rates rocketed through the roof. And you know, today the European consumer needs to wait probably 2 more weeks to get their goods through ocean. So ocean is a key enabler of trade, as is air freight for the higher value goods and the faster goods. But what is important is being able to mix those various modes, air, ocean, sea air, and I believe what our plan is in Qatar with our future infrastructure is to marry all those modes in order for the customer to have the choice of the various supply chain speeds he needs in order to fulfill his customers' needs as well. So that's why Qatar for us is a great spot to start a logistics center in order to marry air, ocean, and road in an efficient way.
I am conscious of time, so I did want to ask if the panel had any final thoughts before we break the session.
Well, talking about supply chain and global supply chain and disruption, you know, any young person, I would encourage to look very hard at a career in supply chain. It's actually very dynamic. It's global. It touches all industries, and FedEx, having the brand and the reputation it has, we are touching so many lives. Every enterprise who starts up probably starts shipping with FedEx, and this is a huge sense of pride for our team members that we allow people to create wealth for themselves and the rest of their families. And I would say a career in the supply chain is a great thing, and it's underestimated versus banking and others. I guess it's because of the money. Banking probably makes a little more money than
and
supply chain.
if you decide to become an entrepreneur and start a business within the supply chain industry, we're happy to welcome you and support you in your business here in Qatar.